Hey, well, good morning, all. Welcome to the Common Good Podcast. It's a Tuesday, June 14th already, if you can believe such things. The summer is in full swing. Super excited to be talking with one of our candidates for Common Good today, Becca Cooke. She's running for Congress in Wisconsin. And as a Minnesotan, that just means a lot because you're supposed to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And it's our neighboring state. So I'm in Minneapolis where, Rob, it's going to be 98 degrees today and humid. It's a just outside of Fayetteville, Arkansas kind of day.
Yep. The thermometer on my car yesterday hit 105 and about 9:00 last night, I was still outside mowing the lawn. Had to wait until super late to do that because it's just so hot. But yeah, so wow. My son Calvin has written a movie screenplay for his senior project in film school, and he has gotten it filmed and is now working on editing it. He showed it to us last time he was home. And by the way, I got to tell you, a little bit terrifying because it's, you write about what you know, and it's about a family. So it's kind of like seeing his perception of my wife and I through his eyes, which is, really kind of terrifying to see. But it's called The Last Supper, and it's about a family that has a meal together the night before the impending apocalypse as environmental disaster brings the end of the world. And there's like what they're calling in the movie, the heat is moving across the globe and consuming it. And it is expected to hit North America the following day. And so this family's having dinner together. So all this to say, my daughter yesterday says to me, "It's so hot, I think Calvin's movie might be like the way it actually is."
Yeah.
We have that sense that the heat is moving in on us. The end of the world is here. And
sweetie, it's just June in Arkansas. Yeah. That's all this is. Don't worry you're a little hard about this. Well, hey, we're talking with Becca because she's running for Congress. Becca, we always like to chat a little bit about the weather, and that's because one of the things we all share in common is that sky, and it's one of our common things. Hey, tell us about what weather's like in Wisconsin. How you doing? What's the sky saying to you today?
The weather, as your neighbor, just over the river. So my district just borders Minnesota all along the Mississippi River border. It's going to be 95 everywhere I go today, but it's going to feel like 100 and some. So, heat advisory.
Yes,
getting ready to sweat it out.
They truly, this is such a Minnesotan thing. I don't know if they're doing this in Wisconsin. The summer schools that are happening right now, they're keeping the kids away from school today if the schools don't have air conditioning.
Wow.
So not only do they have snow days, but they have 2 hot days.
Okay.
I don't know. Kids just aren't tough like they used to be, I guess.
All right.
So there's not a lot you can do about the weather when you run for Congress, but you are running for Congress nonetheless. Talk to us about that. What's got you running for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District in Wisconsin?
Well, so the 3rd Congressional District, this is my, home district, hometown where I grew up. I grew up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And so it's a very purple district. And, the Democrat that's held this seat for 24 years almost lost last cycle to a Trump-backed insurrectionist. And that's what's at stake here. We're watching the January 6th hearings right now. Somebody that I'm running against was there. Right. And so I think is very much a threat to our democracy. And I'm somebody that, grew up in this district on a dairy farm. It's a very rural agricultural district. And, I feel like a lot of folks have been left behind for like decades, with milk prices and losing farms. And my family is one of those farms. So we had to sell our cows because of the price of milk. And, I think that there's a lot of hopelessness in that feeling kind of in rural Wisconsin, and that nobody is really stepping up to represent people. And that's what I want to do. Yeah.
Now, I feel a little embarrassed about this. I didn't know there was a milk price crisis going on. It just seems like milk is more expensive all the time at the grocery store, but that's not
Yeah, well, it's not something that
happening with the farmers,
producers
huh?
see,
Uh-huh.
right? And it's something that I think for decades has been an issue. Farms can, especially particularly family farms,
Hmm.
unless you become a larger, big dairy and milk 4,000 cows. I grew up on a 72 stall barn, and so it's just it's been,
Wow.
I think it industrialized in like the way most of our economies and most of our industries have. But I think it's important to support folks that the little guys, right? And it's
Yeah.
kind of there becomes a lot of different challenges when you go big, right? So,
Hmm. Hmm.
mhm.
So what makes a girl from a dairy farm grow up to say, I want to be a representative? What was your process of offering yourself for public
Of
service?
coming to that, well, yeah, I think my background is really rooted. The way I was raised is really rooted in service, right? When you have a
Hmm.
sick neighbor, you show up and you make them a meal.
Hmm.
When somebody's struggling, you're at their door. My family has a deep history of service, both not just in the military, but of just like stepping up in our community, right? Of being Sunday school teachers and
Hmm.
of volunteering when you need extra hands, right? And so that's
Hmm.
just kind of inherently the way that I was raised, is to be a servant leader. And so I went to school in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and worked at an affordable housing nonprofit all 4 years of college in South Minneapolis. It was affordable housing, job and employment training, and then youth development. And so I think that everything that I've sought to do in my life always comes from like a value center, and it's always value driven, right? And comes from wanting to serve others. And I think that some of that stems from my faith background. And I think that I grew up congregational
Ah.
in Wisconsin here. And so, and I think that it's part of my faith background, but also just like the values that my family has. And so
Hmm.
then have gone on to I'm a small business owner, but I also run a nonprofit in our region that supports women
Wow.
entrepreneurs. So women
Hmm.
on that same path of entrepreneurship, wanting to help revitalize some of our small communities and towns where our main streets kind of have been decimated, right? And
Hmm.
thinking about how do we support rural economies, and that doesn't mean supporting the Dollar General at the end of the road. It's how do we support
Yeah.
revitalizing our main streets that are so important to small communities throughout this region and the state. So,
Hmm.
Yeah. It's really amazing how many Dollar Generals there are.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
probably a
there are.
topic
It's
for a
like
different
Walmart.
day,
It was
but
like
like,
yeah, it's like there was the Walmart phenomenon, and now it's like
yeah,
the Dollar General phenomenon,
yeah,
and I feel like it's really taken away from so many businesses, right? When you
yeah,
can get it
yeah,
cheaper, but also that's I'm not going to totally knock on Dollar Generals because that's what communities can
Yeah.
afford too.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, for
And
sure.
so,
Yeah,
but yeah, we have to reimagine that of like how are we
yeah,
actually showing up to build an economy in a rural community, because
Yeah.
we can't just write them off, right?
yeah.
So
So, Rebecca, you mentioned you live in a purple district. There
right,
are, because of gerrymandering and a whole bunch of other factors, there are becoming increasingly fewer and fewer actually competitive congressional districts. We just know that this is a red district, this is a blue district, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of things that are going to change that.
mm,
Um, you actually live in one of the few competitive districts that we don't really know if is this going red or blue. Uh,
right,
so give us a sense of you know how you navigate that in to be able to win. I mean, first you've got a primary, and then hopefully the general election. You're going to have to connect with Republican voters, conservative voters, in a way that you know, you know, somebody in New York City probably doesn't have to worry so much about. Um, so how
right.
do you do that? How do you kind of live in that in such a divided political climate like we have? How do you navigate that as a candidate?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I think drawing from just my background of being rooted in an agricultural community, understanding how to speak that language, right, I think is important. And when I'm going out talking to folks, I was on a 19 county district tour, so that's how big my district is. And I think what people are
19 counties.
What's that?
19 counties. That's
Yeah,
in your
so it's
congressional district. That's
so
huge.
vast. And I feel like folks, when I show up and have like a round table at a town hall and I speak with workers at a manufacturing facility, it means something to people of actually just showing up, period. I'm the only person that did that in this race. I'm the only working class person running in this race. I'm running very authentically who I am, but also who everyone that I'm working to represent is, that they can see themselves within me, that I'm an everyday person coming off the sidelines to represent them. And, when I introduce myself, like this last weekend, June is Dairy Month. So we have this thing called dairy breakfasts. They're on farms. And I have there's 4 of them this weekend. So they start at 7 a.m. So we're on the road at like 4:30, 5 o'clock to get some of the breakfasts. And that's a pretty Republican set of people. That's a pretty conservative set of people. And so when I'm introducing myself to folks, I'm not saying, hi, I'm Rebecca Cooke. I'm a Democrat running for Congress. I'm saying, hi, I'm Rebecca Cooke. I grew up on a dairy farm. I'm a working class person. I'm still running a small business and a nonprofit that supports women entrepreneurs in rural communities throughout our region. Yeah. And when you talk and connect with someone on a value center and a human to human level, they're more likely to talk to you. If the first thing that I say is Democrat, they walk right by me. And I think that that's how we bring people back together in the situation that we're in right now as a country. We have to start to find our common ground, our common good, right? Of those centers that connect us versus divide us. And I don't think it's not necessarily that it's difficult, but it takes time and it takes energy and the willingness to want to do that. And that's something that I'm really invested in. When I decided to run, a very dear friend of mine said, what is success like to you outside of winning? And to me, success looks like bringing people to the table that have not been connected with in a long time, having hard conversations or having vulnerable conversations. And I've had a lot of those. It's surprising, I think, to me, how much people open up when you start to talk about things that we can connect on. And it's like the language you use and the vernacular that you use, right? If you're able to make those touches on a cultural base, people feel like they can trust you, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I hear you saying go to these dairy breakfasts. When I went to college, I met someone in my dorm who was the dairy princess in Minnesota. And I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up, I didn't know there were dairy princesses. And we went to the state fair
this weekend. Yeah,
is that
the
right?
Platteville Dairy Queen, Allison Dairyland is our major one here in Wisconsin.
It's really something. We went to the state fair, the Minnesota State Fair, as in our freshman year of college, and there was her face carved into a big block of butter. Like people take that stuff. She was truly the dairy princess. And it was really something. And it makes you just remember that we all have a lot of identities, right? And our political identity, for many people, is not something they've chosen. For a lot of us, our political identity sort of showed up or was assumed on us, and we just kind of live in it. One of the things that we say around the Vote Common Good world is that when someone's going to make a shift in their behavior different from their identity, it's because there's someone who helps them make an exception. So I end up going to the dairy building at the state fair because one of the people in my dorm as a freshman was the dairy princess, right? So she was the exception that allowed me to see something that I never would have spent any time going to if I had gone to the state fair.
Right, absolutely.
You as a candidate, I would imagine, are like that, right? You walk in and all of a sudden you're a different character than what many people think, and they're saying maybe, hey, this Becca, I'd be interested in talking to her. I don't really want to vote for a Democrat because I'm a Republican or I'm an independent or I'm I guess anything short of an insurrectionist supporting voter.
Sure.
That you're exceptional. So we refer to people like you as really exceptional candidates, meaning that you're the one that people are willing to make an exception for.
Yeah, I think, for me, it feels very natural because I've been straddling two worlds for a lot of my life, in a way, and like an identity somewhat that I grew up with, but then also like who I've become as I've started to know more of the world, right? And so, as I grew up and became an adult and had so many different experiences throughout the region and the country, and so I think being able to be to help other people know that they can straddle the worlds that they grew up in and the worlds that they want to become a part of or that they want to grow in, right? And so that feels really natural to me, and it's exciting. I think for me to be a candidate, to be able to talk about those things and have those conversations that I don't necessarily have if I'm in one world or the other. It's about like bringing everybody together in these two spaces that have sometimes been separate, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
yeah.
Tell us, how did the process go when you decided, hey, I'm going to run in this primary for the congressional seat in the 3rd district? What went on? Had you tried before? Is this new for you?
No,
How do you get in on all of it?
Yeah, so I'm a first time candidate. I have worked on campaigns in the past. When I was in my 20s, it was something that, I think there's a lot of folks, you're passionate about issues and you want to like do something more than just be passionate about an issue. And so I worked for a US congressman from Southern California for a couple of years before I moved back home about 7 years ago to start a business and kind of move more down that career path. So I had an idea and a sense of what it takes to run for Congress. This seat had been held by the same person for 24 years. And so I had never thought about necessarily challenging that person, but it being wide open for the first time and a real opportunity to get someone that's homegrown with a really fresh perspective in felt exciting to me. I think there's a lot of folks that'll say, well, why didn't you run for state senate or why didn't you run for city council?
Yeah. Get in
And
line.
I don't, right. And I said, I don't feel like I have to wait my turn to serve my
Yep.
community. And it's not about experience, it's about judgment. And I think because, in my primary, I'm running against more of like a career politician type, and some more like political elite types, right? I think people are looking for someone that they can resonate with, that's authentic and stepping off the sidelines. And we don't see that very often in politics anymore because it's really hard for working people to run because of the dollars they have to raise to be competitive and the time you have to take away from your actual profession to be able to do it. And so being an entrepreneur offers some of that flexibility. But I think to me, when our congressman retired, I was really eager and energized to jump in. And I mean, it's a big risk, but I think that we're really due for some fresh leadership, and not more of the status quo. And I see that really in my with my primary opponents. It's just kind of more of that box checking. And I think we need people that are willing to fight for working class folks. So
Yeah. Becca, what has as a first time candidate, what has surprised you about running? Like take, most folks that are listening or watching right now, like have never run for office. We kind of, you watch The West Wing and you imagine that it's like that. It's a lot different than that. Take us like
it's
inside,
not
like what?
glamorous.
No, it's not.
It's not as glamorous
What
as you ever see on
surprised
TV.
you? Yeah, what surprised you about running for office, or what didn't you expect? What would be what would be of interest to people about like as a kind of a regular everybody's a regular person, but as a regular person running for office for the first time?
Well, I think like the work didn't surprise me because I knew a little bit of that, what I was getting into. I think the thing that has been frustrating and surprising is even in my own party, because I'm running in a primary, just that wanting to put you in a box. That and it's not even coming from more of the far right. It's coming from within my own party. And I don't like to play in that realm. And I think we're in this, and we've talked about just this identity politics space and how real it is even within the Democratic Party. And that's really frustrating to me, I think, where I'm like, you're going to write me off if I'm far left, or you're going to write me off if I'm moderate. And we can't be living in that space. And so I refuse to answer that question when people ask me, are you progressive or are you moderate? I said, I am who I am, and I'm pragmatic. I'm solutions oriented, and like this is the problem with politics right now.
Yeah.
And we can't continue to perpetuate that kind of thing within our own party. And so I think that that's been really surprising to me. I just would never have guessed that it would feel like that within my own camp, if that makes sense. And so,
Yeah.
but that's something then we have to work to change. And then that's how, and the way in which then I engage with people is I don't ask, so are you progressive or are you, it's just like, yeah, come, this is a big tent. So come right on under it. I don't actually really care where you are. If we have some shared values, let's do this together. So I think that's been probably the most surprising thing, because I knew it would be hard work. I knew it would be long, long days, and I'm like game for that. I mean, I grew up getting up before the sunrise, so it's like that's like okay, we can work all day. We can work, we can work our asses off on here. But but it's that stuff, that kind of game playing that kind of exists too, like within politics. That I'm just like I'm not on for that. So
yeah, and you do realize there's just a lot of stories going on, right? Like which part of the party is going to have more energy, who's going to bring out more people, who's going to be more attractive. It's really complicated. Like figuring out how to run a country, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's really hard. It's not for the faint of heart. And because we've chosen a public service attitude as opposed to some other version of government, I guess, where certain people are trained up in it, we say it's a citizenry electorate, and it's a citizenry candidates. And so there's people that just there's just a lot going on. And I imagine you feel this sometimes, that you realize that for some people a political choice or decision or framing, it's often much more than that to them, right? It starts to feel like it's something more crucial and essential, and that ends up landing on you as a candidate. How do you deal with that? How do you think about the fact that for some people, they're thinking, if you get elected, it's the end of America, or if you don't get elected, it's the end of America, or if you don't have the right position on this thing, then that's going to weaken this movement that we all know is important, and then some kind of cataclysm is going to come. There's just a lot of cataclysmic thinking that goes on around politics, and not always a lot of hopeful thinking. So how do you deal with all that?
Well, and I think that kind of like fatalistic perspectives, I feel like have almost emerged more in the last decade. I think since the Trump presidency, just because that was something no one expected and it felt very fatal, right? And a lot of things were really drastic and did really change. But I think helping to meet people on that bridge so that from an emotional perspective, they don't feel like it is the end of the world, and looking at the long game. And I think that we are short-sighted sometimes as a society and as parties of the pendulum always is swinging. So it's like, how do we create some sort of stability within that pendulum swing, because so that it's not swinging so far every time, right? And so I think using that kind of language, and also knowing like, even with my run now, and even like the perspective I have is, it's like, how do you do like movement building that will transcend past just this election cycle? Because we have to keep organizing in rural areas. We have to keep organizing, whether it's an election year or not, and showing up and talking to people about issues. And I think when you're present, and when you are a present representative, people don't feel as scared because they've met you. They know who you are. You're present in their communities. You're engaged with the other local elected officials. You don't feel like a boogeyman, and and it's like, I think, if somebody from the far right met me and really got to know me, they probably would like me. And so it's like,
that's a great attitude. Just start.
I mean, I really do. And because I could find a way. I mean, I've talked to Trump voters. The guy had a Trump 2020 hat on. I was collecting signatures to get on the ballot. And, he said to me, I said to him, I said, well, do you want to sign my papers? I am a Democrat. And he was like, well, don't write me off just because I have a Trump 2020 hat on.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, okay. And then we talked for a while, and he signed my papers, and maybe I'll get his vote. But like, you have to have conversations with people. And that's where just like, even on our side of the spectrum, you can't just write folks off. And so I'm having a lot of conversations with the Republicans, and I think it's great. And to me is energizing because they're deep conversations. They're not just the talking points, right? We dig deep into why, you know.
Yeah,
Right on. That's really great.
Really great.
Yeah.
So Becca, you are in our second round of candidates for common good that after our conversation with you, we're going to be talking more about. It's a initiative that we've launched here at Vote Common Good, where we're trying to recognize those candidates that are saying, hey, I'm going to use the common good as my governing criteria. This is something that matters to me. Why was it important for you to, kind of join this effort to be a candidate for common good?
I mean, I love what you're doing, and I think the ethos of it is what I'm trying to communicate within my campaign. And I think what I love about the approach that you all have taken to talking to rural communities, to talking to faith communities, is like, hey, it's okay to be Republican and vote for this Democrat that one time. And, it's like, it's okay to be evangelical and choose to support a Democrat that has a lot of values that line up with you. And so, like, to me, I think we need to, again, do a lot more of that bridge building and doing it in a value centered way. And I really have appreciated, the training and the conversation I had with you all about how to talk about those tough subjects that sometimes are dividing within faith sectors or dividing between parties, to drill down into what are our commonalities and how do we find common ground. And so, I just applaud the work that you all have done in rural communities and in faith communities. As somebody that I grew up in a pretty, I would say, progressive faith tradition. But spirituality is really important to me. And I know it's important to a lot of voters in my district, and they come from a lot of different faith backgrounds. And so I think drawing on that when we talk too about, you mentioned like just that kind of fatalism, it's like, okay, about thinking about a higher power too, even when we talk about some of these issues, I think is important to me. So I was really excited to join, I think, the work that you are all trying to do of bridge building, I think, and relationship building that is absolutely critical for us to continue to have a strong democracy. Otherwise, we're going to be too disparate and disconnected.
Yeah, I hear you. And look, Daniel's with you too. Daniel says if you're a political outsider running to improve things, that should be a progressive enough for everyone. So I think that's such an interesting
Daniel,
attitude.
I appreciate the encouragement.
Yeah, and Daniel likely doesn't live in the 3rd Congressional District, doesn't have the privilege, of visiting the beautiful rolling hills of western Wisconsin.
Yeah, gorgeous.
But if he wanted to participate in your campaign to help out or volunteer online or make a contribution, where could Daniel or others go to do that?
Sure. So you can visit cookforwisconsin.com is my website. We also have a really robust, because I'm a really active campaign, I'm a really populist candidate, and I'm doing stuff all the time. So I'd really encourage you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Those are kind of our bigger social platforms to engage and see like what I'm doing. We're also starting our grassroots efforts this weekend. So we're launching a canvas, 5 canvases throughout the district this weekend. And we're going to be having virtual phone banking. So even if you don't live in this district, we would love to have you help call in to connect with folks. And so if you go to our website, you can get connected in that way. We're also, just 56 days away from the election. So also working to raise resources to get money. So
what day is that? What day is 56 days from now?
It's August 9th. So we're hustling. We're going to be out in the heat, talking about the heat. We're going to be out there pounding the pavement. So would also just appreciate, even $5, $25 is super helpful. That's
$2,800.
$2,800.
Yeah.
I gotta give it. But yeah, we're working to get paid media out, mailers, and working on TV ads and that kind of thing too. So it'd be really awesome. whatever you're
Yeah,
able to
and
do.
people shouldn't worry if they give you $2,800 now after the primary, they can do it again because it all resets. So don't feel like, boy, you're just saving up on your money you're going to donate, because it does cost money just to do things, just to basically engage and communicate, and that's where the money goes to. Unlike what we've seen from the former failed president and his grift of election fraud, where the money just literally goes to pay $60,000 for his son's girlfriend to speak at an event. That's not where your money is going. Your money is
happening here. No, not at all. So we hired an organizing director who's from the district. We've really homegrown our campaign staff, which is awesome. And I'm proud of to be investing in young people that want to see change here. And then we're going to start to do some like more paid relational organizing. So that means, working to build relationships within the district, having neighbors call neighbors, neighbors knock neighbors' doors, which again, I think is important when you come back to that cultural piece of trust and that kind of thing of who you can talk to. So, yeah.
Well, and Kay says we need a lot more younger ones like Becca. So,
well, thanks, Kay.
Thanks, Kay. And we need all the Kay Ryans as well. We need all the people. So, hey, Becca, thanks so much for taking time to be with us today. Thank you for running. It's super great. We're going to be supportive. I look forward to coming and helping out myself as a neighbor. So, just super great. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks,
you too.
Becca.
Okay.
Bye.
Once again, Rob, it's just such a treat. I mean, just feel like the luckiest people in the world, don't you? We get to chat with these guys, folks.
Just a breath of fresh air.
Like somebody opened the window on that farm. Seriously, if you've actually been on a farm, it's not all that fresh air that you smell on a farm. Yeah,
exactly.
I think my analogy may have fallen away there, but
yeah, I've had the chance to talk with Becca several times, throughout kind of the process of us getting to know her, and then she's been through our candidate training, and which, by the way, I was noticing that she gets an A for following along and learning, because a bunch of stuff that we talk about with candidates, like, hey, you should just drop this kind of stuff into your conversation. She did today, and that was pretty impressive. So I've gotten to know Becca a bit, and she is just so genuine and positive, and I love I love how she is identifying and trying to overcome the division and divisiveness even on the Democratic side of the party, because that exists. Like, are you a Bernie Democrat, or are you a Biden Democrat, or like where are you part of the progressive wing, you part of the moderate wing? There's a lot of suspicion and distrust even within the Democratic Party, and she's trying to say, hey, listen, don't put your labels on me.
Right. I want the whole bird. I don't want the left wing or the right wing. I want the whole bird.
I'm a Becca Democrat. That's what I'm a Becca Cooke Democrat.
Becca-crat.
And I just really appreciate her attitude and her approach with all of that.
Totally.
I think it's fantastic.
Just delicious. Hey, all right, friends, if you're watching this anywhere other than on YouTube, this stream is going to end, but it's going to continue over on YouTube. So all of you there on Facebook, there's a link below in the description. It's our YouTube channel. This is going to pick up over there. So we're glad to have you, but we're trying to drive people over to our YouTube channel. So if this disappears on you, well, you just make your way right over there, good friends, and we will see you over there on the YouTube channel. If you're already on the YouTube channel, thanks. It's kind of where we would prefer you to be. So glad to have you along. And if you're over there and you haven't yet hit the subscribe button and the like button, I don't know. Do that if you want, and I guess if you don't want, well, that's fine too. All right. So just I think I have to push a couple little magic buttons to make all that happen, Rob. So
yeah.
All right. Hey, a couple more things to talk about. This Candidates for Common Good is something that, you mentioned. Becca's one of those. Some other candidates are coming around. It's not really an endorsement in that classic sense. Like, we're not saying, hey, we think these candidates are our kind of people. They're saying we think the common good is our kind of thing. And I really like that. I really like the idea that we're joining ourselves, together like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we launched Candidates for Common Good last month. It is a recognition, an invitation for candidates across the country, up and down the ballot, to say, hey, I'm going to use the common good as my governing criteria. It's not about, oh, what do you believe about X, Y, and Z in terms of policy positions?
Mm-hmm.
It's much more about the sense of, I'm not in this for myself. I'm in this for everybody, and I'm seeking to try to, um, to lead in a way that brings the common good to the forefront. And so we, when we launched with 21 candidates, which feels weird to launch with an odd number, but I kind of like it. We
Not if
launched
you're
with
a
20.
blackjack player, it doesn't.
Yeah,
21 feels
yeah,
just like the
yeah.
number.
Yeah, so we launched with 21 candidates. We're adding 8 more today, and that's pretty exciting.
Well, good. That
With
brings us to
only 8,
the
yeah.
desirable 29, which is the
Well,
number that
I got to tell you,
you really want.
29 is one of those numbers that I like because when I was a kid, my favorite football player, Hanford Dixon, wore number 29. So
Hanford
it's one of,
Dixon.
yeah,
What's
it's one of
Hanford
those.
Dixon been up to? Do you know? Is still around?
Yeah, he's still around. He does. I see him, do like public appearances on behalf of the team every once in a while.
Oh,
But so
let's have him on
I
a
just want to.
podcast sometime. That would be great. Like your childhood hero.
Let's see if we could do that. So
We
we've
should totally do that. I mean, what's the point in having one of these things if you can't have your childhood sports number hero on here to chat with you?
Yeah. So, anyways, with only 8 candidates with 8 candidates joining the candidates for common good team today, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of run down through them and name them. Lucas Kuntz is running for the United States Senate in Missouri.
Okay.
This is interesting because, we've said all along that we here at Vote Common Good, we don't pick favorites. And so we now, this is, we have favorites,
Sure,
but we don't pick favorites.
They're just obvious.
It's much like, children,
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking. But this is one of those races where we now have 2 candidates in the United States Senate race in Missouri that are candidates for common good. So that's kind of fun. So Lucas Kuntz in Missouri is running for United States Senate. Will Rollins in California is running for the House of Representatives. Won his primary last week, which is pretty exciting. Jan Perry is running for the U.S. House of Representatives in California. John Conyers III in Michigan is running for the Congress. That name might sound familiar to you. John Conyers was a longtime congressional leader in Detroit who made a name for himself. This is his son, who is taking up the mantle and offering himself for public service. We've got Rebecca Cooke, who we talked to this morning, who's running in Wisconsin in a race where Congressman Ron Kind is retiring, and so it's a competitive race. It's a big race. It's an important one. We've got 3 more folks that are running for the state legislature, which, state legislatures are tremendously important. You think about all of the horrible things that are happening in the country.
Yeah.
A lot of them are coming from state legislatures, and
they matter too, don't they?
Yep. State house races, state races are so important. So excited to have some state legislative candidates. Kate Schaefer, from just up the road from me, here in Arkansas, Bentonville, Arkansas, is running in Arkansas. Stephanie Stahl Hamilton is running in Arizona, and she's a candidate for Common Good. And this is just my favorite thing of all. Reverend Wendy LMA is running in North Carolina 28 for the State House in North Carolina. And Doug, that means we've got 29 candidates for Common Good, and we have 2 Reverend Wendy's.
Incredible. From DC to North Carolina, we've got Reverend Wendy's everywhere.
Just everywhere.
Well, and it's kind of cool. I think having reverends run is great. Not that they are trying to lead a Christian nation or anything, but it's good that people from that tradition run, and that's something that they're willing to lead out with, especially running as Democrats, because there's a lot of Democrats who don't think about faith voters and people of faith. It's not sort of how they orient, and it's super important. In fact, I just heard Raphael Warnock. Pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, and the senator from Georgia. And he still preaches every Sunday. I heard him say last night. He's on a book tour. So I happened to watch MSNBC late last night, I think 10 o'clock or something my time. He was on. And then I looked at Morning Joe this morning, and he was on. So I wonder if they sleep in the building. I wonder what they do. This happens a lot where they'll get, somebody that's on a book tour or whatever. And so he has a book out. And he had mentioned that he even preaches every Sunday at Ebenezer Baptist Church, which that's a lot. And it's a good note to other pastors. There's a lot of pastors who think that having to preach on Sunday, that's a full-time job. I like Raphael Warnock's attitude about it. No, I'll do that one. And then I'll also be a U.S. senator, on the side that may be making a 30-minute talk once a week in the area of your profession you've been in for 20 years. Shouldn't take 30 hours of preparation a week. Can I just rant about that for 1 second about pastors who are like, I was taught, I heard people, yes, right. I'm asking permission. I feel like I'm in the hearing, and like I recognize myself for 10 minutes for this rant. I'm going to recognize myself. But I remember people saying like about making sermons that you should spend an hour per minute preparing your sermon. Do you remember hearing this kind of stuff? Were you trained up in a tradition that said nonsense like that?
Yes.
Like if you're not good enough to put a meaningful talk together that takes you less than 1 hour per minute, you're just not very good at your job. Like I can understand in maybe the first year, your first 30 sermons, 40 sermons, it took you a little while to kind of get. But I know people that have been at it for decades, and they're still like, I'm like, what are you doing? Like editing an Oscar award-winning film? I mean, an hour a minute? It's just bonkers to me. But Raphael Warnock says, hey, no, I'm not gonna worry about that. I'm gonna be the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church and be the U.S. senator. But anyway, he had this great line where he said, in some ways, he's just full of these great little one-liners. I mean, I've liked the man. I've had a privilege to be a friend, and I've just liked him so much for so long. He's got great affect and delivery, and just got a treasure trove of fantastic one-liners. And one of them is, a lot of ways I see your vote as a kind of prayer of the kind of world you want us to live in.
Yeah.
Just a great little line, what you're doing is just casting forward a little hope for the kind of world that you want to live in, and it's I like that kind of thing. Now we've mentioned it a lot that people from the Black church tradition in the Democratic world get a lot of leeway for that, and I'm glad they do. I'm glad that they're the leaders. I think the expression of Christian engagement in Democratic politics should come from the Black church if it's going to come from anywhere. 100% for that. And I wish that the allied white Christians would also lend their faith in a more full-throated way to, inviting people into the common good that we think could be possible in politics, because people on the other side of the political perspective are very comfortable reminding you of God and faith and other things that they the Republicans and even insurrectionist supporting candidates like to use that language a lot.
Yeah. And, I think just the really clear distinction is that, when we're encouraging people of faith to engage in politics, it's not for our privilege. It's not for our position. It's not to make things better for us.
Right.
It's not to take America back for liberal Jesus. No, it's for the common good. Our faith calls us to think not just of our own interest, but the interest of others. Our faith calls us to love our neighbor as ourselves. Like that's the driving factor of all of this. It's not about some liberal Christian nationalism. No, it's this kind of engagement is is the type of thing that is generous and just for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, and that's hard, you know, because our politics are designed in a lot of ways. I don't know that they were initially designed this way. And they certainly don't have to be designed this way. We could remake them. But they're designed to call out some kind of separation between people. The thises or that. And then sometimes the people who want there to be not that kind of division also are a third category, right? Yeah. Well, I'm not this, and I'm not that. I'm this come together category, which also has its own struggle to it. But it's an ongoing battle that we have in how we think about our politics and what the role of our politics is supposed to be. And we're now at this as an organization, I guess, in this will be our fourth or fifth cycle that we've been saying to people, okay, there's some candidates and want you to think about those candidates and want you to have a criteria for thinking about those candidates that's different than just your political identity and sort of your habitual pattern for voting. That's long, slow, hard work.
Yeah.
I made a little video yesterday. We're going to post this afternoon of this conversation that I had with a bunch of Proud Boys in a bar in Florida, and edited it and made some commentary in between it and turned it into a more appropriate sort of YouTube video. And just having rewatched that thing, the 34 minutes of chaos in this bar that I tried to edit down to sort of make some sense, you know, for someone who might only want to watch it for 11 minutes, you know, which includes half of that or so commentary on what's going on. I was struck by the reality that, look, we all only know what we know, and we're not totally in control of what we know. It's not like we're totally free agents just choosing all the things we know and understand. Yeah. We make a lot of decisions that block out things we could never know about. There's a whole lot of things we should be paying attention to that we're not, and we don't even know what some of those things are, right? Like, we're really limited in what we have. And what we have access to. And so when we meet other people who think differently, those are those little doors that open up and allow us the chance to step across a threshold and maybe see something a little different. And that's super hard. And there's not a lot of political systems and apparatus that reward you for doing that, right? That say, oh, you know what you spend your time doing is walking through, you know, crossing over the thresholds of new ways of thinking and understanding. So much politics is simply driven by get the people who should vote for you to vote for you and move out, and models of voter engagement and how do you convince people to think like so much pressure is on that side of the system. There's just very little that's on the know and grow and understand and think more broadly than you once did. And so my little political devotional for the day.
Yeah. Well, Doug, you know, we've been watching the January 6th committee hearings. And if folks would like to watch those with us, they can right here on our YouTube channel. Right. If you feel like, okay, I feel like I need somebody like to just kind of shout at this with. Doug and I don't shout. We mostly, my wife who watched yesterday said, you say wow under your breath a lot during the hearing.
Wow. We're sitting there. Yeah, we're like this. Wow. Like that would be the YouTube video playing. And we're like, wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow. We're like,
so if
we're like golf
like to watch
commentators, and we're off the side of the green, and we're like, he's gonna make this putt.
Setting up his putt now. If
And
you,
by the way, why is golf the only sport that you have to have everybody be quiet? I mean, I was a basketball player, and there'd literally be people ripping their shirts off and screaming at you and banging things while you're. And you know how hard it is to shoot a free throw? It's not the easiest thing in the world. It's no easier than a 4-foot putt that all of a sudden 1,000 people have to shh, or even hitting a drive. And I'm a golfer. I don't understand it. I mean,
all these things.
Side point for the day.
Yeah. So as we're watching the committee hearings, and I invite folks to join us with that, because we're really, I am learning so much, and really, as horrific as it is that these events took place, I really think there's a lot of value in watching these committee hearings, and invite folks to watch them with us. But since yesterday's committee hearings, there's been a few new developments. One, Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, who ended her presentation yesterday in their closing remarks by talking about how much money the Trump team has raised through, this fraudulent lie and falsehood about the election being stolen, that they were told and clearly should have known was not the case. And
but you only know what you know.
Yeah. But they have raised millions and millions of dollars off of it. And she laid out where some of that money went. $5 million of it went to a group that planned the Stop the Steal event. Yeah. And she revealed a little in an interview yesterday afternoon. She revealed a little bit more, that Kimberly Guilfoyle, who is the girlfriend of Donald Trump Jr., was paid $60,000 for her involvement at the January 6th event that Donald Trump spoke at. She introduced her boyfriend, Donald Trump Jr. She spoke for about 2.5 minutes. She was paid $60,000 for that, $400 per second that she spoke. And
$400 a second.
And I don't know, Doug, when you hear that kind of thing, the grift of these folks.
Incredible what they're willing to do and to make known publicly. And then, some other people, which I'm sure we're irritated by it, because it just is such a sign that the thing is broken, that whole world is. But imagine being the other speakers that paid your own way to get there or something else, and you're like, going to that nightmare of a show. That thing cost me, $3,000, and she gets $60,000 paycheck for doing it. Well, of course, because that's what these people have been up to from top to bottom. The other thing that I thought Zoe Lofgren, she brought up, and I mispronounced her name. I called her Zoe the other day. I'm sorry, I didn't know that you didn't.
It's not Zoe.
The E. Yeah, I was.
Zoe.
Shamefully corrected today. No one, fortunately didn't bring my shame before me. I just heard other people introducing her. I was like, oh, whoops. The other thing that Congresswoman Lofgren reminded us of was that the Trump hotels were paid millions of dollars out of this money. The self-dealing that's going on inside of, you send your money off to that little PAC, and then the PAC signs a contract with speakers and with hotel guests, which are all normal things that you would do if you're gonna try to influence politics. You're gonna raise money, and then you're gonna hire people to do work and to travel and to stay places. Totally reasonable. Yeah. Unless the people you're paying are like the soon-to-be daughter-in-law of your family, and the hotels that you're paying are your own hotels, and this is why these people, these insurrectionists supporting candidates and Trumpist supporters, will just constantly say that everything is corrupt, because they are so corrupt. Yeah. We know so many senators and so many Congress people who are not corrupt, and a few who are, but we know so many who are not, right? Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is, the people who are yelling about the corruption most often, well, you know who it is. The ones who are the most corrupt,
Yeah.
right? It's just constant. Like this nutso letter that Trump put out yesterday that used to in the cup. It's just full of this same nonsense, just over and over and over. And I think that what's happened now with these committee hearings, and look, I've been close to wrong on so many things about how people will respond to Donald Trump. So, take this with a pound of salt. I just think he is being weakened so much as a political character at the national level. Like the only way he got in the first time was that people believed that maybe there was something possible. And then the only way he stayed in was that people didn't want to see a change. But when you've been out for 4 years and you're just squawking on the sidelines and all of this stuff has come out, I don't know. I just think it's devastating to his worth. His worth
and
as
maybe
a political candidate.
and maybe most devastating. Liz Cheney tweeted yesterday that, and Liz Cheney, who is really, her star is rising pretty significantly. I think throughout these hearings, I think so far she's been the just the go away, shining star, whose political capital will be significantly increased by these hearings.
Now, she may
Cheney,
may lose her primary in her own state. So yeah, I mean those two things are not in competition with each other.
Right.
She could lose her seat and still have her star rise. Yeah.
And she is doing what she's doing, knowing that she's putting her own political career in jeopardy. And she's, there's been a lot of folks who've been referring to her as a profile in courage. And I think that's, I think there's something there, though not unqualified. But anyways, my point is, Liz Cheney, I know
literally barely bite my lip.
I know, I'm watching you bite your lip and not
voted
say, but
for
she
Trump
voted
in
for
2020.
Donald Trump in 2020.
On November 3rd, she was all for him. By January 3rd, that was finally enough. So real great judgment.
Yep. She tweeted yesterday that the
60 days that made a real difference for Liz Cheney and for Adam Kinzinger. Just way to go, champs. Okay, go on.
She tweeted yesterday.
And Bill Barr, who then said that he was I was waiting for you to do that as an intentional.
Yeah, I know.
And then Bill Barr, who then said, and I would vote for him again if he was the Republican nominee. After all the stuff that he's recorded saying, he would still vote for him. So these people, super champs.
Yeah. Team normal is on a sliding scale. There's we're grading on a curve here when we call them team normal.
Fair enough.
Listen, Liz Cheney tweeted yesterday that criminal recommendations will be coming from the committee in due time. That as a part of what the committee is going to be doing is they're going to be not just, political theater, but they are going to be making recommendations to the Justice Department based on their investigation for criminal charges to be levied against the people who have.
What do you think of that?
Broken law. I think it's good and critical and important.
Just not sure it's the role that committee should play.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like Zoe Lofgren said yesterday, somebody asked about this, are you going to make recommendations? She said, our job is to do this thing. It's not, we're not on the criminal side of things. This idea that Congress makes criminal recommendations is I don't know. I just think it puts them in a strange spot. And maybe that's what our system has, and the only thing our system has, and that's sort of an obligation that falls on them. And you have to say to yourself, oh, okay, well, that's, you think about like someone who's a mandatory reporter for violence that they would see against children or something. Like, that's a really good thing, right? That a teacher or a clergy member or somebody in public view has an obligation. That's not their job, but they have an additional obligation to make this known to authorities. I guess, you could argue that it's like that, but there's just something that feels like someone else should pay attention to this and say, like, I think there's criminal action here. I don't know, like investigators or something, like people for whom that's what their paycheck says that they do all day. Because this stuff is public and it's being put into public congressional record. So yeah, I guess I'm just thinking sort of on that political side of it. And by political side, I don't just mean like what's going to get people to vote for this or that, not the
So
electoral
just
political side.
yeah, for clarity, let me say. Um, so I just went back and checked Liz Cheney's tweet that I had retweeted. She says the committee has not issued a conclusion regarding potential criminal referrals. We will announce a decision on that at an appropriate time.
Oh,
So what my guess is that they will probably say these are the crimes that were committed by these people, and not
full stop. Yeah.
Yep, and then not, let everybody else kind
Let
of
me show you the
that
list
would
of
be
crimes.
that would be my guess. Instead of saying we think the Justice Department should charge these people with these crimes, my guess is they will say in our opinion, these are the cases, these are the situations in which these people violated the law, and then not draw any conclusion beyond that. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I know I'm being
how it all
overly
plays out.
picky here about the language, but this, I don't know, maybe the language sort of really matters here. A person, like even a mandatory reporter, is not, your job is not to declare something a crime.
Yeah.
There's a process for declaration of a crime. Your job is to report what you know, and someone else can determine whether that's a crime or not. And so that's the line that I guess I'm thinking about here is that the separation of powers is a really big deal, and between Congress and the justice side. And I don't know, I think we have lots of ways that we skirt that stuff in some funny habits in this society. And it'd be good if they can lay out what happened, what they've investigated, that they can put people under oath, that they have to tell the truth. Like, people have been a little surprised at how forthcoming some of the people have been in the hearings. Well, that's because you're under oath before Congress. And if you lie or are determined to have misled, that doesn't go well for you. So it's a real thing. So they should lean into all that power. But then there is the chance, I mean, this is the thing, that they can make federal criminal referrals. So it exists in the statute of their, the legal structure that allows them to exist.
Yeah. Speaking of criminals,
be careful about that.
Speaking of criminals, Doug, did you see about the Patriot Front? Did you see this news out of Idaho? These 31 neo-Nazis who were in the back of a U-Haul on their way to disrupt, riot. Even some reports say plans were to violently assault people at a pride event in Idaho.
I did hear about that.
And, I mean, just heartbreaking that, these folks who have always been around are once again, as they have been at other times in our country's history, they are once again empowered. They are once again emboldened to act on their hate and their prejudice. And, Idaho, like a couple of things, you think Idaho, when was the last time Idaho was in the news? But then, like, you realize, like, you read the reports and, one of the guys that was in that U-Haul truck, one of the 31 guys in that U-Haul truck, is from Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Idaho is a bit of a organizing center for that kind of activity.
Yeah, and there are folks from one of my neighbors was in that truck.
Yep, one of your citizenry,
and
one of you.
People from all over the country that were there, and it's just, man, we have. It's heartbreaking to see, but the heartening thing is that they were caught, they were stopped, the law enforcement did their job, and now this group that has prided itself with its anonymity, faces are splashed all over, and names are known, and that's a good thing. Yeah,
it seems like very good news that this crowd has been exposed and that this plot was, first of all, stopped, and then they're going to get to the bottom of it. And look, the FBI and ATF and these folks, they've got a long list of white supremacist and violent, nationalist actors that they follow and watch and are worried about all the time. It's why the FBI says our number one concern is domestic terrorism, which this is in that category. This is what they're talking about. Yep. And it is the number one concern. And yet so much in our federal government wants to not put the screws on that crowd in the same way. It's quite disturbing. Yeah. Well, does that do it for the day?
That does it for the day.
All right, we'll come back tomorrow with another 2.5 hours. And then going to have another interview tomorrow afternoon here on the same channel on this podcast with Jack Jenkins of Religious News Service about what he found about how Christians had organized the January 5th and January 6th actions and activities. And then on Thursday, John Pavlovitz.
Excellent.
All right. We will talk to you on the flip side, Robb Ryerse.
Bye-bye.